go.
Okay, today we're going to make banana and chopped chip muffins. We've set out the bench already. You can see I have a chopping board, banana. You'll need a third of a cup, 3/4 of a cup of thinly packed brown sugar. You'll need 2 eggs. Make sure when you go and collect it off the trolley that you get yourself a bowl and you put it inside the bowl, otherwise they'll roll round and they may fall off your tray. You will get 60 grams of butter, which will already be measured out, and you will need a pot on the stove to melt that. You're going to need 1.5 cups of self-raising flour. In the recipe it says that you need 3/4 of a cup of self-raising and 3/4 of a cup of wholemeal, but we're not going to use wholemeal today, we're just going to use plain self-raising flour. You will also need 1/2 cup of chopped chips here, which will be on the trolley in these containers, and you'll also need a baking tray for your muffins, and you'll need the little wrappers that go inside. So to start off with, we're just going to put our wrappers so they're ready to be put in. When you come, just get a little pile, and then whatever you don't use, bring back and put back on the trolley. Don't worry about standing and counting 12 out, but make sure you're not wasting and doubling up. Just have one in each of the trays. The most important thing that you need to have already done is put your apron on, which I have already done, and wash my hands. Then, after we have put the wrappers in, the first thing that you need to do is you need to preheat your oven. So, if you come around this way, we're going to preheat our oven to 160 degrees, which is a moderate oven. So just turn it around to your 160, and then we then turn this around to, you can see there are different knobs on the top here. We're looking for the one that is fan forced but with the tube. So you can see it is this one. Where is it? That's the top and bottom, but we want it with the fan, that's the light. So it's this one here. So turn it onto that. Make sure your shells are at the top, because the muffins, the heat will actually roll around inside because they're fan forced, and we want our muffins at the top. If we put them down the bottom, and if we haven't preheated, it'll burn the bottom of the muffins, so we want it at the top so the muffins will brown. Okay? Once you have set your oven, make sure that you have actually washed your hands. Give them a good wash, because now we're up to the preparation stage. You can see I have set my workbench off. You will actually have measured all of your equipment, but for purposes today, I need to show you how to measure your equipment, with the equipment to measure your ingredients out accurately. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our banana, and using our knife, you can see I've already cut the end off. Have your scrap bowl ready, and then peel the banana. And place the scraps in the bowl. The next thing, you'll need a medium-sized bowl. Just break the banana into pieces so it becomes easier. And then the next thing is, with a fork, you just need to mash your bananas. So it'll take you a little while, because the bananas at the moment aren't overly ripe. When they're ripe, the older that they are, that they've come off the vine or the tree, the starch changes into sugars, or simple sugars, and that's what makes them sweeter, of course. If you have a banana that's not ripe, it tastes really floury and starchy. So the sugars, when you start to do it, you'll be able to smell the banana. Make sure that it's all mashed, and then mix it around in your bowl, because that's eventually, this bowl here is going to become our wet bowl. We're going to have two different bowls, a wet bowl and a dry bowl, and then we're going to add the two together. So we've got our banana mashed. The next thing we need to do is we are going to measure our flour. and we have, it's 3/4 of a cup of the self-raising plain and 3/4 of a wholemeal, but we're going to put those together. So 3/4 and 3/4 equals 1.5 cups, and we're going to use the back of our knife to measure. So when we come up, take a nice big scoop out of the top, like so. Use the back of the knife, take it across the top. Just place that there for 2 seconds. Then we do our half. Same thing, nice big scoop. Make sure it's overflowing. Then take the top of it off so it's accurate. Do not use that side because it's serrated. Use the flat side. And it comes down. The next thing that needs to happen is you'll have little sifters in your bay, which look like this. And you've got your big bowl here. This becomes your dry bowl. So you put all your dry ingredients in this to start off with. The next stage is we're actually going to, rather than sift it, rather than have this sitting here so I can use the other measuring cups, I'm just going to put the flour in there. I'm not going to sift it yet, I'm going to do that in a moment. I'm just going to sit that there so I can finish off all my measuring. The next stage is what we're going to do is we're going to get our 2 eggs, and we're just going to crack our eggs into our bowl. Some of you will like to crack it on the side, some will like to crack it here. I'm probably used to doing it with one hand and then separating. If you don't feel confident to do that, just use 2 hands and pull it apart. Okay? And then the same thing, you'll need to wash your hands again after you have done that. In your beige, you'll have a whisk, and you will use your whisk to whisk your eggs in a moment. I'll put our whisk out the side there just to remind us. The next stage we need to do is we're going to measure our chopped chips. And with our chopped chips, we have 1/2 cup of chopped chip bits. So with our measuring cup again, we get our 1/2 cup measure. Using our knife, just take off the top of the bits. Don't eat them. And just set them aside because they are going to go in with that bowl. The next one is our brown sugar. With our brown sugar, we have 1.5 cups of brown sugar. So we get the 1/2 cup measure, and you really have to pack it in, like push it in when you do it. Okay, so use your knife, push it in, and then the same thing, take off the top, like so. Okay, and then set that aside. So that was 3/4 of a cup. So that is a 1/2 cup that's full, and this is a 3/4 of a cup. Because this is a 1/4. Same thing, pack it in and pack it down, and then slide it on. So we have the 2. The only other thing which we haven't measured yet is our milk. We don't actually have jugs in yet, but if we had a jug, we would be using a jug. But at the moment we only have cups until the order comes in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to improvise for the time being, because these are generally used for all dry ingredients, and we use a jug to measure wet ingredients. So the next stage is we have to get our milk, and in here it says 1/4 of a cup of buttermilk or 1/2 cup of milk. We're going to have 1/2 cup of milk, but we don't have the cup measure, so we're just going to sift this. Just hit your palm against the side of it, and then you're going to set that side over to the washing up. And now we're going to move our tray, and we're going to put all of our washing up, so anything that we have that has been used and needs to be washed, we're going to put onto our tray. And then eventually we're going to have our tray here, and then we'll work this way for it to go through the washing up and finish. So the next stage now is we're going to then, because we've sifted our flour, we're going to start adding our dry ingredients. So that will be the chopped chips all mixed in. The flour is already in there, and now just break the sugar up. I've washed my hands, so it doesn't matter that I'm using my hands to break that up. And then that means the dry ingredients are all accumulating. That now enables us to use a measure to get the milk, and we needed 1/2 cup of the milk. The reason why we don't use these is once we've filled them to the top, to get an accurate measurement, we can't walk with them. So I try and walk with it, it'll spill everywhere. So we're then going to add the milk in with our bananas. So this is our wet ingredients bowl, and you can see I'm starting to accumulate all my washing up on my tray already. The most important thing is we have all of our work area cleared off. So once you have done all your measurement over on the trolley, you will then bring all of your other equipment and ingredients over to your workstation. Okay, so we have our dry ingredients there, which has got our flour, chopped chips and the brown sugar. We're just mixing that through so it's evenly dispersed. If there are any lumps in the sugar, just make sure you break them down. And we've already incorporated the air, which is a mechanical method of incorporating air into our muffins to make them nice and light and fluffy. The next stage is we're going to get our eggs, and we're just going to give them a little whisk in our bowl. Just be careful because this is only a little tiny bowl. We don't want all the eggs flying out, but we want them mixed through. When you've done that, we're just going to drop that into there. Just take the fork out. Use the fork to get the excess egg out, because it's a nice little small device. And then the last thing is we're going to mix that through. Then set your whisk aside because your whisk has already done its job. Same thing, make sure your workstation is nice and clean. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a well in our dry ingredients. And we're going to pour our wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. And we're going to mix from the middle out. Take your time, be patient because we don't want any lumps in our mixture. Okay? And don't try and add too much flour all at once, because we don't want a lumpy mixture. The only thing that we haven't done is we haven't added the butter to our wet ingredients. So just to show you, I have put the 60 grams of butter into the little saucepan. Basically we're just going to turn the stove on. You just hold it in and it'll come on for you. And we're just going to put it there. If you want it to melt quicker, you break it up. Won't take that long. The easier, in the future we'll be able to use our microwaves, but our microwaves aren't hooked up with power yet, so we're not able to use them. That's why I'm improvising and using a saucepan to start off with. It'll take a little while, but one of you in the group will be working on the dry ingredients, the other one will be working on the wet ingredients, and the other person in between will be setting up the trays and will be melting the butter. So make sure you've allocated jobs as you're sitting watching this clip to work out which jobs and what roles you will have in the process of making these. At the end, when they're all presented, you'll be given a brown paper bag and you can divide them up between you to take home. This recipe is between 2. Okay, so if you either work in 2s or you can group together and work in 4s. Whatever your teacher indicates to you will be the way that you do it. And then the other thing you really need to think about is your washing up and making sure that all your washing up is on your trays as you go. And you can see my workspace is nice and tidy and clean. That's really important that you're doing that. Okay, the butter has melted now. Make sure you turn your heat off. And then we're just going to add the butter to it. We're going to keep that spoon just set it aside because we're going to use that to measure, and we're going to set all of our washing up to the side. We might do a little clip for washing today so you can see how you're supposed to wash up and how you're supposed to clean. So if we just mix that through with our wooden spoon, and so that mixes through quite quickly. The mixture is quite brown because of the brown sugar. Get off as much of the mixture as you can. You can use your dessert spoon. You'll need 2 of those to be able to measure this out. Set this over for the washing up, then bring your tray in front of you. Then what you'll do is you're going to spoon it in using your spoons. You're going to fill them about 3/4 full. You can. Don't fill them right to the top because they're going to rise because of the self-raising flour. Do one side and then we're going to spin the tray around and do the other side. And we use the backs of our spoons to be able to move the mixture in. Make sure the mixture is sitting right beside your bay, and try not to get any mixture spilled onto your tray, because if it goes onto your tray it's going to be harder to clean. You don't ever use metal scourers on these baking trays because they're Teflon. So we just use hot soapy water, and if there is mixture that is caked onto them, you just need them to soak in hot water in the sink to be able to wipe it off. So I've done half, well, I'm just about done half. I'm just going to spin my tray around now and do the other half. Like so. I think this recipe is supposed to make 12. We'll see how we go with the quantities because we have slightly changed the ingredients as to what had originally been set out, which shouldn't be a problem. And move it so it's in the one spot, because it'll try and move around on you. And then, and remember, these are new skills that you are learning, so don't expect yourself to be perfect at it to start off with. It'll take a little time, and don't be too hard on yourself. I don't know whether I'm going to get quite 12, but I'll try, even if it's a little tiny one. Try and get some more in there. I might even have to pinch some from the other ones to try and move it around. I want to get all the mixture out. What you can do now is the plate scraper, or some people call it a spatula. Take the end of it off there. And using our pinky, we'll just push the excess into there. And as you can see, I've cleaned the bowl. And the next stage, you can see I have a couple that are a little bit bigger than others. I'm just going to pinch some of this one and top it up into here. Because we want them to be as even as we can, because if we've got ones that are overloaded compared to other ones, the little small ones are going to cook quicker than the other size ones. Okay? It's probably a bit too generous in the beginning, wasn't I? Hopefully you'll learn from my mistakes. Okay? And now we're looking a little bit more even. Alright, the next stage is we're just going to pop this into the oven. And that will take about 20 minutes for it to cook. So whilst that is cooking, make sure that you are starting to wash up.
Yeah, start.
Okay, so at the moment we're just going to check that our muffins are ready. So just come up, open the oven, make sure you've got your oven mitt handy. You can use 2 oven cloths. We never use tea towels. The reason we don't use tea towels is because if they drop down on the element, they can catch a light. And the oven mitts are thicker. The other thing too is if you use a tea towel and it's a wet tea towel, the tea towel will then, as it gets hot, will let steam come off and will burn your hand. So make sure you always use an oven mitt. You can use two, or you can just use one. I'm going to use the 2. Just pull the rack out. You'll be able to see they've gone brown. Some have risen more than others. These are new ovens, so I'm not familiar with how well they circulate the air. So you just take a tiny little bamboo skewer, stick it in, and you see as it comes out, nothing sticks to it. Nothing sticks to it, these are ready. And then take them out, close the oven, make sure that you turn your oven off with both elements, so they're back around to 0. Most important thing is that you don't actually place the oven tray onto the Laminex table, because otherwise it will burn it. And we have to get some heat mats that we need to put on this, so we have those for later on. So then after we've done that, we're just going to take these off and just place them onto our little cooling rack, like so. Now I can move this one away and we can place our next ones on here. Then what I'm going to do is, because this is hot, I'm just going to place it on the stove because we don't want to put it onto the Laminex. Okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put them nice and closely together, like so. And then in here I have icing sugar. And I'm just going to sprinkle the icing sugar over like that. Now, when you have finished, you'll need to have some paper bags. And of course, it's 2 in a group, so you'll get 6 each. And then you'll place your 6 muffins into the bag. After you have done that, do not close the bag up, because if the muffins are hot, they will start to sweat. Keep them nice and open so they can still be aerated. And of course, Miss will then let you know when you're able to be dismissed. Today is we're going to look at washing up. Washing up is really not a difficult process, but you need to be organised. So the first thing you'll do is, after you have prepared all your food, as the muffins or whatever is cooking, then the next thing you need to do is you'll have a scrap bin that's full of rubbish. You need to go to the bin, you need to empty it out in the bin. Then what needs to happen is we're going to work our way through. We're going to leave the pot, which had the butter in it, to last, and then usually if we were doing crockery and cutlery and glasses, you would go glasses first, then crockery, then you would go your knives and your forks, and then you would work your way through to your bowls, and the last thing you would do would be your saucepan. You're going to turn the water off, make sure the plug is down, don't go crazy with the dishwashing liquid. Have a little spray in, you can come a little bit closer if you like and have a look. Make sure you swirl it around so you've got some nice bubbles happening in there. And start with your sifter. I haven't made it super hot, I've just made it probably about 70 degrees, 80 degrees, so I don't want to burn myself, but hot enough to kill any bacteria. And just place that to the side. Do your whisks, any cooking utensils. You're going to start and then pile them in, so then they start to, with your knives, don't just place them in, make sure you wipe them off, put them on the sink to rinse. All your bowls can start to slide in. What starts to happen is it starts to come away from the sides because the water's getting hot onto it. Okay. When you've done that, rinse off any excess bubbles, over to the side, turn your water off. Spatula, your wooden spoon, notice there is no food left on. Make sure you give it a good wipe with cloth. If there's not enough coming off, use your sponge. Get your tray, wipe the tray off. So And then continue on with all of your bowls. Make sure all the bubbles are off, so you don't just pick it up with all the bubbles and then put it straight over. So if you put all the bubbles over it like that, don't just then go, because it's going to drain off. Make sure you wipe all the bubbles off. Sit it to rinse. This one's going to be a little bit stuck, so it has been sitting for a little while. All of the little measuring cups, they've only had dry ingredients in them, so there shouldn't be anything lodged in them. I set them aside. And then the last thing that you'll do will be your pot. Make sure that you wipe off all of your surfaces so they are clean, and make sure that you wipe off the side where everything is going to be placed before you pack it away. You can now pop your dishwashing liquid away. You notice that I always carry a tea towel on my apron, so I don't have to run around and find one. I then wipe them off and then set them just to the side. Sure that you stack them as you go. When you're having your cups, because when they're finished, they should look like so. If I then grab my tray and place all my equipment on my tray, like so, I've then got a nice neat pile that I can pick up and then move to then pack away. The most important bit that you need to make sure that you do at the end is that you actually wipe out the sink, and that you do not leave any water sitting on the sink. So if you leave water sitting on the sink, little animals or insects through the night come and want to have a little bit of a feed or a drink off the top of the sink. And we don't want that. We don't want any vermin in our kitchens. Okay? So I'll just quickly finish off wiping these off, and I'll show you what is expected of you as far as the sink is concerned after you have finished cleaning. As you can see, this has probably taken me 5 minutes. If you come around the side here, you'll be able to see that in our bay now, we can now bring our tray over, and now we can work our way down. So all the bowls we'll place them together, we'll pack the sieve back away, the pot will go back in, all of the equipment will go on this tray. Eventually we'll get little cutlery trays that will be placed in there so they'll sit in better. This goes down into the pantry, and then all of our measuring cups are then stacked in the right place. If you come around over to here, a bit closer, I'm just going to let my water out. Just pop the sink over there. Then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the top of my bay over, like so. And then I'm going to run some water in it to get rid of the bubbles. Try not to go too overboard with the soap bubbles because it'll take forever to get rid of them. And then while that's just draining away, I'm just going to grab some spray and wipe. I'm going to spray and wipe all over the sink. And I'm going to spray and wipe all the benches. And then you're going to wipe with a damp cloth over top and then a dry tea towel. We never, ever, ever sit on the bench because there is a lot of bacteria that is waiting through the air or benches that we sit on outside the kitchens. Then wipe all of the sink off, wash off the excess spray and wipe, and make sure that our little tiny plug is clean. Take it up there. And the last thing that needs to happen is we're going to wipe it off so it's dry. And you grab a tea towel, over the top, come into your sink. You want to come a little bit closer for me? You'll be able to see. You have a good look in there. All of the water is now wiped off and the sink is completely